Welcome everyone to week number 2. We survived. Can you believe it? J Speedway review is hot, and we are here for you. My name is Chris Burns from the Loki and Jabroni Show. Green, not too far from my favorite liquor store in the entire world, the Bunghole Liquors, is Corey Huffnagel. Corey, how are we doing this week?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
And I'm glad you're doing good. I am now doing better. I don't know how many of you people know. Corey certainly does. Had a little bout with the diverticulitis this week, and after 6 days of antibiotics and just general pain, I would like to raise this glass of mystery beer that and my goddess of love handed to me. So here's to you, to another great week of racing.
Cheers.
Wow. Pumpkin, I think that's the Pumpkin. You can get that at Bunghole Liquors in Peabody, Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah.
So, Darlington, like ever, and this one was no exception. Let's start with the Xfinity race. We'll go to the trucks in a little bit, but I definitely want to talk about the Xfinity race. Once again, as we talked about last week, it was Cup guys owning the field from beginning to end. Harvick for a while, then Hamlin. How did you feel about it?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, obviously, of course, when, you have the Cup guys and the Xfinity guys race on a certain given weekend, obviously, of course, you're going to see some of the Cup guys end up winning. But from what I saw on Saturday, I mean, I thought the race was exciting. I mean, I didn't see like the whole race. I just saw like the highlights, pretty much the final laps. And I mean, I thought that was a great battle between Logano and Hamlin coming down the backstretch. But anytime when you're racing at Darlington, you pretty much have like the crossover move, like when you're going into like turn 3 or turn 4 whatsoever. But I thought the race on Saturday was exciting. I'm looking at the top 10 right here. So, you got mostly pretty much from first to fourth, is pretty much all Cup drivers. But,
Right.
there were a couple of Xfinity drivers that kind of impressed me most. Like, there were guys like William Byron, which, of course, he's got the 3 wins this year. He's already into the playoffs. And then I'm pretty much looking at, Justin Allgaier, he finished 8th. So those are pretty much good runs for both the junior motorsports guys. But some of the Xfinity drivers actually had some of the throwbacks, which I really liked, pretty much. And actually, there was one that kind of stand out that was pretty awesome, and that was Dylan Lupton's 24 car, which they made a rainbow throwback car, giving tribute to Jeff Gordon, which I thought that was cool. I thought that was amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah,
that was absolutely gorgeous. I'm looking at that top 10 right there with you. I didn't see Brennan Poole doing much in the race, and we talked about it last week, but with Brennan coming in 6th, that was a nice surprise. Byron, of course, you knew he was going to be strong. Cole Custer, you did call last week that Cole Custer was going to be a force in this race.
Yep.
Back, Hamlin, Logano, Harvick, Jones, your top 4 is all Cup guys. Are they taking these opportunities away from the younger guys? And I know what it's about. It's about track time. It's about dollars and cents. It's about building their teams on the lower level so that when they decide, like Harvick did a couple years ago, to get out of that car, build his own team, to have somebody in that car to run it full time, are they taking opportunity away?
I mean, if you look at it, of course, like all the fans, they're going to start saying, like, why are the Cup drivers winning the Xfinity and the Truck Series races? Why are they taking all the prize money, all the trophies, like everything away from all of these Xfinity guys that are pretty much all up and comers, And some of these kids, like, I could pretty much see them as running the Cup Series within like the next 2 to 3 years. And then, of course, this year with NASCAR giving out a new guidelines rule for Cup drivers that have more than 5 years experience in the Xfinity and the Truck Series, they're only allowed to run pretty much 10 in Xfinity and then 7, I believe, in the Truck Series or so. But now I just heard probably 2 months ago, they changed the rule. So now instead of 10 races, it's going to be going down to 7 in Xfinity and then pretty much 5 in the trucks. So that just gives the Cup drivers a lot of questions saying like, okay, now I got to look at my calendar and see what races should I run, what races can I not run, and what races, are pretty much the standalones and whatnot. I mean, if you think about it, the Xfinity and the Truck Series have been pretty much founded by Cup drivers. I mean, if you look at back in 1982, the first ever race at Daytona, that was actually won by Dale Earnhardt. And
Right.
if you looked at the last couple of years, I mean, when Mark Martin won all those Busch races, in like the 90s and the 2000s, nobody didn't care about that. When Kevin Harvick won Busch and Xfinity races, nobody cared about that. But it's just that the problem is, whenever Kyle Busch wins a race, that's when everyone says, okay, he pretty much wins too much, even though he's the all-time wins leader in the Xfinity Series. And then in the Truck Series, I think he only has like 49 or 48 career wins or so. But, if you think about it, do I really like this rule? I mean, I think it's a good idea that NASCAR is doing this. I mean, obviously you're still going to see the Cup drivers win races, but what's actually good about this is that you're not going to see a lot of them run, even though we're coming up to the Xfinity playoffs and then the Final Four coming up this year. But what's actually kind of good about it is if you watch the standalone races, like I could pretty much look back, at the race at Iowa, a lot of the Xfinity regulars finished in the top 10, which that pretty much amazed me. And, there was some of these guys that were running in the top 20 that some of these guys you haven't even heard of. They would finish in the top 10 and top 5. I'm thinking like, well, I've never seen this guy before. I've never seen that guy before. But that's what pretty much I think about the rule. And, do I like it? I mean, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. But, on the other hand, like, as long as I see Xfinity or truck regulars win, that'll be okay with it.
Sure, and to piggyback your point, I never really had a problem with the Mark Martins and the Kevin Harvicks, so much so that I got hot at it because they hadn't. Just speaking of Mark Martin, he never won a points championship at the Cup level. Harvick, I still think once you win the championship at a Cup level, you should take yourself out. But then again, the converse argument is if you can beat Kyle Busch, Cup champion, Kevin Harvick, Cup champion, Brad Keselowski, Cup champion, you're beating the best.
Right.
You rarely, if ever, see Jimmy Johnson go to the lower level.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you rarely, if ever, saw Jeff Gordon or Rusty Wallace or Dale Earnhardt unless it was a very special event.
Right.
I can't necessarily pick on Mark Martin so much. I've had my problem with Kevin Harvick doing it. I was actually quoted in a newspaper article here in my hometown when the NASCAR beat writer, good friend of mine, called me for a quote. He goes, "What do you think of Kevin Harvick winning his second Busch Series championship?" It doesn't make sense. To me, it didn't make sense. You don't throw, let's just say Matt Ryan, Falcons represent. You don't throw Matt Ryan back onto the BC Eagles and be okay with it. I just my particular issue is I look at a lot of these names, and I'm going to go back to the list real quick. Matt Tifft, sorry for him, hard luck this past weekend.
Yeah,
but we talked about Byron, we talked about Brennan Poole, Cole Custer, Ben Kennedy, Brendan Gaughan, Ryan Reed. I'm trying to remember who had the best over the weekend. Brandon Brown with his Dick Trickle throwback was the sexiest car in the Xfinity race, bar none, my opinion. But you're taking the spotlight off of them, whereas when I would go to the races over the years, you'd have maybe 2 or 3 Cup guys. This is back when the field was 43.
Right.
You had 40 regulars. And I know the pickings are slim now, and they're spread so wide because you'll see any number of these guys. J.J. Yaley's another one. He'll run the occasional Cup run, but he is truck. He is Xfinity. He will run an ARCA, or he will run a K&N Pro Series. These are guys that have to fight to move to the next level. Mark Martin doesn't have to fight, or didn't have to fight. No. Bobby Labonte didn't have to fight. Again, another series champion that would make the run, do double duty every weekend that he could. Had a problem then, too. But it's not so much, and this might be, I don't want this to turn into this generational, us versus them, older versus younger, Chris versus Corey. I just think that these guys should be very selective. And like you said, with NASCAR coming out with this new rule that you're going to have only X amount of races to go down and run the Xfinity or run the truck, I think you're going to see a lot better competition going forward in the Xfinity series, in the truck series. And they're not going to have to worry about, oh, gee, Harvick and Busch are in the field this week. We may as well just pack up now. We're assured of a 7th place. Whereas other weeks, they're going to say, I got a shot to win this thing.
Right. I mean, if you looked at, last week, what I actually thought of, like I remember like in the truck series a couple of years ago, like the only Cup drivers that you would have run in that series, you would have guys like Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski. Now it's pretty much, Kyle Busch because of course he owns his own truck series team, which is KBM. And I remember about a month ago or so, he was on XM radio one time and he said, "Oh, if NASCAR limits me to 0 races, then I'm done. I'm going to be packing up, everything as it is." So that pretty much goes a point, if NASCAR is telling them like, okay, we don't want you to run in the truck series races, but we do want you to field your own trucks. Obviously, of course, the 18 of Gregson and then what's the other one I'm thinking of? What was the other one? Okay. But anyways, 2 of his trucks whatsoever. But anyways, and then of course, you got Brad Keselowski, which he had his own truck team. And then of course, a few weeks later, he announces that he's going to be shutting down his team at the end of the season. So if you think about it, the truck series, it's already starting to turn into a young driver sport. Like, there's kids that are like probably like 20 and under.
Right.
The way I see it.
And you still have some of the grizzled veterans like Matt Crafton still out there doing his thing and still making a mark. One of the things you brought up just now is that Keselowski and Kyle Busch, Keselowski shutting down his operation. KBM is obviously still has a really good place in the truck series, but Kevin Harvick in 2013 announced at the end of the 13 season, he was shutting down operations on KHI. No more Xfinity series, no more truck. I'm focused on winning an overall points championship, which to that point he had not done on the Cup level. I wasn't a fan of it because I thought KHI could bring a young driver up and make them something stepping stone that they need to go to the next level. But what happened exactly 1 year to the day after KHI shut down operations?
I mean, I remember that year. Harvick went to SHR. But I actually remember when, Harvick did shut down his team. I remember that he actually sold some of his trucks to a different low-funded team, whatever it was. But then I also remember that he actually merged his team, which is, Richard Childress Racing, which, of course, now they own pretty much 5 of their cars, which, the Dillon brothers will run part-time. And then, of course, the only drivers that'll run full-time for RCR would be pretty much Brandon Jones and Brendan Gaughan. And then, of course, okay, now I'm already sidetracked again. But,
all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
Look, and Rusty Wallace for a long time had his own Xfinity series. Back then it was the Busch Series team. And he tried to bring his son up.
Yep.
His son had talent, but his son was also prone to crashing.
Right.
It's no big secret that Stephen Wallace did great on the lower levels, and as he progressed, you gradually saw that as the competition got better, you can't get by on just your name.
Right.
We can go back to the Earnhardt family. I give Junior a lot of credit, and God bless him. At the end of this season, this sport's not going to be the same without Dale Earnhardt Jr. Was given nothing. He was made to work. And as he progressed and as he showed the old man and the stepmom, I can do this, they moved him forward. We can go back to, and I'm having a Corey moment now. Now I'm losing my mind.
Oh, boy.
We can go back to the Dillon brothers.
Yeah.
Obviously the grandsons of Richard Childress, owner of RCR.
Mm-hmm.
They are 2 guys who are just now cracking the surface in Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series.
Right.
Do I have a problem with Austin Dillon and Ty Dillon doing double duty? No. Yes, Austin has won a race on the high level. Ty is still working his way up. They're going to make a mark. For them to go to the Xfinity Series and run well and do well, in my mind, I don't care if Austin Dillon has a Charlotte win under his belt. In my mind, Austin Dillon is still an Xfinity driver who is trying to make a name on the Cup. Sells a lot of shirts. Yes, he has a slew of fans because of that tilted number 3.
Yeah.
In my opinion, and I'll say it here first, that number 3 should have never been brought back. But that's another episode for the winter when we have no racing every week, where we'll have to come up with content. But for now, looking back at this Xfinity Series race this week, I was impressed. I saw a lot of good hard racing. Like you mentioned, that crossover move at the end by
Yeah.
Hamlin was fantastic. That was old school Harry Gant, Richard Petty, Rusty Wallace racing. It was gorgeous, and that race did not disappoint.
And pretty much like what Darrell Waltrip said one time. He said, if you do things at Darlington, you do things there that you won't do anywhere else at any other racetrack. I mean, heck, you go look at the finish in 2003 when Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch were side by side and they were beating fenders to the checkered flag. I thought that one was amazing.
To me, that's still my favorite Darlington finish of all time,
Yeah.
and I've been to Darlington a half a dozen times. Always a great time. But seriously, and I didn't go to that race. That was the one year we decided not to go. And to watch that on television, my buddy and I looked at each other and said, yeah, we really should have been there this week.
Yeah.
But we weren't. Again, and that's what Darlington's all about. And I also remember, I want to say it was a year or two ago, it was Jeff Burton or maybe Dale Jarrett on the broadcast saying, if you win at Darlington, you can win. It's that kind of track.
Right.
It's tough, hard-nosed racing. When you see that on TV or you play a video game, you think the racing surface is so wide. It's not. I've walked that track. I can show you pictures, Corey, of me climbing up turn 1, and it was like climbing Mount Everest. It was just ridiculously hard.
That's steep, huh?
But the banking, it's banked all the way around. That flat surface that you see when those guys were going 4 wide on the restart, that's a flat surface down below.
Yep.
So that's where you get your advantage. If you shoot out and you get on that flat surface, you're not having to worry about the camber. You're not having to worry about tire wear, really, because that's concrete.
Right.
The racing surface is asphalt, and anybody who knows Darlington knows that it's asphalt mixed with seashells and sand. It's old school asphalt.
Mm.
It's not what you see on your street every week.
Right.
Now, to win there takes guts, because you saw some of those lines that the Xfinity guys were doing, and we'll talk about the Cup in a few minutes.
Yep.
They were running a high line, like right next to the wall. And that term, the Darlington stripe, if you don't know, look it up. If you're new to NASCAR and you're watching us for the first time, look up the Darlington stripe. You will see guys pull into victory lane, much like Hamlin did twice this weekend, with the right side of his car with scratch marks.
Yeah.
That high. There is no other racetrack on the circuit where you can run that high and carry that amount of speed like you can at Darlington. Mm-hmm. And it is tough because the 2 turns are so symmetrically different. It's a lot like, it's a small Pocono. The 3 turns of Pocono, which is a track I hate, by the way, and I look forward to telling people next year when we get to Pocono how much I hate it. But I equate Darlington to Pocono, and I love Darlington.
Right.
3 different in Pocono, you have 3 different turns with 3 different sets of banking, 3 different scenarios. Yep. In Darlington, your first turn is wide. When they turn that track around, not physically, only by moving the start-finish line, that threw a lot of drivers off. The Jeff Gordons, the Jeff Burtons, the Jimmy Johnsons, Kevin Harvicks, Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart was... I watched Jeff Gordon win there 4 times. It pissed me off. But to win there takes a certain determination and a certain amount of, I guess you'd say, balls. Yeah. And you do things there that you're not going to do at a Michigan, at a Daytona, at a Charlotte. You're going to run on the edge. You're going to have the pedal to the floor. And the way that sun goes down off of turn 3 and 4, you're blinded. It's absolutely ridiculous. And as a fan who has sat in those stands, I can tell you firsthand, I've looked and gone, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I couldn't do that either. No.
Swig a beer to the common man, first time in a week. Actually, the last time I had a swig of beer, I was sitting in front of you, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, sickness is a bitch.
Yeah.
We didn't cuss at all last week, and I've already cussed 3 times. My apologies to the viewers. So at the end of the day, Xfinity, before you take over and talk about last week's truck series, who are you most impressed with last week in the Xfinity series at Darlington?
So one driver that I was impressed on, as I could find it here somewhere. So one driver that I was really impressed on definitely has to be William Byron. Like I said, he's got the 3 wins this year, and of course, it's only going to be like 2 races left before the playoffs start, which they'll be in Kentucky September 23rd. But other than that, for a kid that's run at Darlington for like the first time ever in his career to get a top 5, I was pretty impressed by that.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, it was the guy who finished right behind him in the 48, Brennan Poole. Brennan Poole was never on my radar until I met you in New Hampshire, because a couple of friends of mine know Brennan. And they're like, oh, yeah, go Brennan Poole. He was in the something or other pumps, number 48. Watch him. I did. He didn't do very well, but he did well enough to catch my eye. So I made it a point this weekend, being sick, sitting on my easy chair where I am now, to watch Brennan Poole and to keep my eyes on him. On my little gimmick phone right here, the NASCAR app allows me to listen to the radio broadcast. And when the radio broadcast is talking about Brennan Poole climbing through, he went from 14th to 11th on that last lap. He went from 11th to 8th on that last lap. He was making moves quicker. He was turning faster laps than the leader at that point. Now, if maybe this race were 20 miles longer, which at Darlington would equate to about 17 or 18 laps, Brennan Poole could have easily been in contention for a top 5.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the chips didn't fall that way. So a big shout out to Gary and Candy out in Tampa, Florida. Hope you're safe during this hurricane season, by the way, guys. Yes. If you are,
you guys are safe.
Please, I want to mention 2 things real quick. One is loveforhouston.com, run by a good friend of our show, Bruce Pritchard, Something to Wrestle, the podcast. If you've never listened to it, please go out and check it out. They're running a fundraiser right now. Bruce lives in Houston. Many prayers go out to him. Also, I have family in Florida, friends in Florida, all sorts of people. Keep them in your prayers. Hurricane Irma is looking nasty, and we are praying for everyone in that area, especially right in the direct path. They're talking about Homestead, Miami, which is where the last race of the season is for both series. They're talking about there's going to be devastation, but not as big as Central to North Florida, which where a lot of my family and a lot of my friends live. So, guys, keep them in your prayers.
And also, I just want to take this out, too. If anybody lives in the Florida area, please evacuate. I mean, don't do like what they did in Houston, just stay in and ride the storm, please. If they tell you to evacuate, please do so.
Yeah, it's not a joke. It really isn't. And nobody wants to hear about friends and family losing lives. So please, once again, if they tell you it's time to go, pack your stuff and get moving. So, Corey, this is where you're going to take over, and you're going to talk about the truck race that happened last week.
Yes, sir. So, as many of you guys knew or don't know, so the Truck Series was up at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park up in Mossport this past Sunday. And we had Austin Cindric taking home his first ever career win in the Truck Series in the Chevrolet Silverado 250. It was his first.
Allow me to interrupt, if you would, but I believe it was you, sir, that said Austin Cindric would win this race.
Yep, and I picked him as a favorite. So the reason why I did that was because if you guys have Xfinity race last week at Road America, he made his Xfinity debut when he was driving for the 22 car for Team Penske. So he puts it on the pole, and I said to myself, and I actually saw his background. I mean, he actually runs a couple of rally car races on the road course, and from what I didn't know is that he was a really good road course racer. So I said to myself, if he does pretty good at Road America, there's a really good shot that he could win it at Canadian Tire next week. So I think he finished 16th at his debut. So he was running at the front for a little while. And then, of course, he got caught up in a wreck from like James Davison and then some other drivers that were caught up in like a spin whatsoever. But then going back to this past Sunday, so he ends up winning the pole. So he leads probably the first few laps, the first 31 laps or so. So he ends up winning the first stage. But what happened was at the end of the first stage, he ends up getting penalized because he dragged his fuel can coming off the pit road. So basically you can't drag any equipment off of pit road. So that was the point where Austin had to make a rebound. So he had to start at the back of the pack. But I was watching the last couple of laps, and I got to tell you, that 19 truck was coming on strong. I mean, he was chasing down almost everybody. It probably took him like maybe a few restarts or so, but those last final laps when he was chasing down the 33 of Kaz Grala, I said to myself, okay, he's probably going to pass him either with 2 laps to go or on the white flag. So the last lap waves, and I forget what turn number it was, but they were coming down one of the corners whatsoever. And I think I saw Kaz probably overshot the corner just a little bit. He probably braked too hard because I guess what happened was the 19 had a big head of steam. So the next thing you know, he pretty much tapped the 33 truck, and then, Kaz spun, didn't get any damage, and then, of course, Austin ended up taking the win. So my big question is, even though Kaz Grala hasn't won a Daytona back in February and Austin Cindric doesn't, when you're running second, and you don't have a win, to get to the playoffs whatsoever, and you're running second, are you going to be finishing second, when the race is over?
You race hard to the end.
Yeah.
You have to race hard to the end. I can equate this to the new rules package that they've had for the last few years, where when the yellow comes out, everything slows down. I've been watching this stuff long enough where when the yellow came out, you raced back to the line.
Yeah.
And if nobody knows their history, let me give you a little history lesson. It was at New Hampshire some years ago where Dale Jarrett had been involved in a wreck right close to the start-finish line. He was running middle of the pack. The car is on fire already on a $150 by him and trying to gain position as you're going to the start-finish line. He was in very real danger. I like the rule. But at the end of the race, like you were just talking about, you race hard to the end.
Right. And, obviously that was Austin Cindric's chance to win because obviously, of course, they've had a couple top 5s this year. And, there were some races where they've been running good, but other than that, there has been races where they just haven't been closing the deal. And obviously Kaz Grala, don't get me wrong. I'm a fan of him as well. I like him. I was happy that he won a Daytona. And, obviously, of course, he came out and said, I'm going to race him the same way that he raced me whatsoever. But now you go into the playoffs, it's going to be a whole different, playing field whatsoever. I could go back to last year's race at Canada where Cole Custer didn't have a win. And then, of course, John Hunter Nemechek, had 1 win at that time. And then, of course, he ended up winning 2 races. But coming down to the checkered flag, I remember when Custer kind of got loose and then Nemechek almost gave him the bump and run, didn't pull that off. So the next thing you know, both trucks are side by side. And then both of them are pretty much in the grass in that little guardrail whatsoever. And, then they come across the line and, of course, Nemechek ended up getting the win. As I watched that finish, I said to myself, okay, Nemechek got a second win, but did he really have to push Custer out of the way?
No, probably not. But once again, when you're fighting for a win, you do what it takes. And we just talked about Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch battling for that win in 2003 at Darlington. When you're at that last lap, all bets are off. Whether you're a teammate, an enemy, a friend, somebody who babysits your kids, I don't care who it is. People used to give me garbage and still give me garbage when I play a board game with my daughter.
Right.
Well, why don't you let her win? What am I teaching her? You're not teaching her anything. And what am I doing if I'm inside a race car? Which, let's be honest, they're making more in a race than most of us make in 6 months worth of work, even on the Xfinity or the Truck Series. Opportunity. And I'm racing, say, against you, Corey, or against producer Eddie Focus, or against Loki from the Loki and Gironi show. I will do what it takes to cross that line first, as long as I don't hurt you, injure you, or kill you.
Right.
And if that means I get you a little loose, if I take a little air off the spoiler, if I nudge you just a little bit so your car goes just that much sideways that I can sneak by and get that 1/1000th of a second win, that's what I'm going to do.
Right. There has been, ever since this whole win and you're in deal came out, I would say 3 years ago, it's changed pretty much a bit. And then you pretty much add the stages this year, that's even made it a lot more competitive, but also that it makes it a lot more exciting. So pretty much the win and you're in kind of deal, let's say like you win at like Las Vegas or so. You pretty much have that win until the playoffs come in September. But then once the playoffs arrives, then it's a whole different ballgame because now you have to win one of the 3 races in order to advance to the next round. And of course, there has been times where, drivers are in that whole like elimination mode, like they have to like win to move on to the next race. I mean, yeah. And then of course, like the stages and everything, like, that makes it a lot more important as well because a lot of those drivers need to get those stage points, in order for the playoffs to start. I mean, think about it. Like you have that whole win and you're in kind of deal with, not thinking about the stages. I mean, yeah, it's fine. But then, once the playoffs start in September, you're going to say to yourself, like, where did everyone else go? Because the reason why was because a lot of those drivers picked up a lot of stage points throughout the first 26 races. And if you don't have any stage points, you're pretty much not going to go anywhere.
And they carry over, and that's with the stages being the way they are, and once again the chase in the Cup Series. I don't know if they're calling it the chase anymore. I don't know what
they're calling it the playoffs.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
And now the Xfinity and the Truck Series are following suit.
Yep.
Like you said, the stage points are going to be very important. They carry over. However,
yep.
I will throw this out there. All the stage points in the world aren't going to help, say, Martin Truex Jr. if he goes winless in those 4 races, because win and you move on. So let's throw out a crazy scenario right now. I don't know. Again, the Truck Series, I'm starting to get my feet wet again with that series. So let me just go to the Cup real quick.
Okay.
Harvick, Johnson, Hamlin, and Logano all win in the first 4. Truex is asked out.
Yeah.
100%. Doesn't matter that he's clinched the regular series. He already has. With 1 race to go, he has clinched the regular season. Congratulations, Martin Truex Jr. That's my daughter's favorite driver.
And TJ.
She picks him well.
Yep.
Oh, she's like her dad. She picks him well. Now, if Martin Truex can hang near the front, you get 3 Cup guys. And again, we're going back to the Cup here.
Yep.
Let's say Johnson, Harvick, Hamlin all win in the first 4, and the final one is won by off imagination Danica Patrick could ever pick up a win on the Cup Series.
Yeah.
Which will not happen in my lifetime. Actually, you know what? She'll win before the Dallas Cowboys win another Super Bowl. Check out the Loki and Jabroni Show's top 10 this week to find out what I'm talking about. So if Danica wins the 4th race, Truex moves up. Why?
Yep.
Because of all those stage points. He has been fantastic. You and I have already talked about it. I'm sure we're going to talk about it more as we creep forward toward Homestead, Miami in November. Important, but if you can't parlay that into a win, you're kind of screwed, my friend.
Yeah.
So, impressed me this weekend, and I'm going to go back to the list. I'm going to go back to, I think I said about, I'm looking at I don't know how I got to the Truck Series on my little gimmick phone here. All right. See, now I got to do this again. Who impressed me the most on the Truck? Brennan Poole, I already talked about. Let's go back to the Truck then. I'm looking at the championship standings for the playoffs. Christopher Bell, obviously, is in the catbird seat. John Hunter, Nemechek, we've already talked about. Johnny Sauter, Matt Kraft, and Austin Cindric. Kaz is there. Chase Briscoe, Ben Rhodes. Then there's the line.
Yep.
Where underneath the line is Ryan Truex, Grant Enfinger, Noah Gragson, Justin Haley. How many trucks are in the playoffs?
So, for the Truck Series drivers that make it in, and then Xfinity, it's 12 drivers that make it in.
So it's 8, 12, 16 as you graduate on the scale.
Yeah.
Ben Rhodes, it looks like, is sitting pretty.
Yep.
What would it take, and I'm asking you because you're a little more steeped in the Truck Series than I am, what would it take to get Ryan Truex above Ben Rhodes? They're virtually tied in points from what I can see. What would it take to get Ryan Truex into that fateful 8 and have Ben Rhodes sit out?
So I'm looking at Truex's season so far, and right now he only has about 5 top 5s and 9 top 10s. But if you look at it, like, I would probably say if I had to pick one of them, I would have and Rhodes. The reason why was because if you go back to the race at Kansas, he had, I'd probably say, a really good truck to win. You know, he was running against Kyle Busch and he was running against Gregson and Nemechek and all those other guys. 7 laps to go, his engine ends up expiring. And I said to myself, "Are you kidding me?"
No.
I mean, I was kind of surprised myself, but then I was actually kind of like, sad, because there was one part where he was in the garage area, he was hugging his crew chief, like he was just like really like upset that he didn't end up winning the race. But think about it, he was 7 laps away from winning the race, like literally 7 laps, and then his engine ends up expiring. But I got to tell you what, I would say that if Rhodes wants to make the playoffs, he would have to win a race, first of all. And I would say the one racetrack that I think he's got a really good shot to win at is Chicago. Because if you think about it, it's kind of a sister track, to Kansas. But I've been watching that 27 team this year. They have been running pretty good on the mile and a halves, kind of like, what they did at Kansas back in the springtime. But, yet again, like, that team has been running pretty good this year. And I really think, Rhodes can make it in, by a win. If not, he would have to make it in on points, depending on what the other guys do from 6th through 8th who don't have a win this year.
Okay. So while we're here, we broke down the top 10, or actually, we broke down the top 12 of the Truck Series. I'm going to go back and do that for the Xfinity because we didn't do that.
Yep.
Here's your playoff window right now for the Xfinity Series. Number 1, William Byron. Number 2, Justin Allgaier. Number 3, Ryan Reed. Number 4, Jeremy Clements. Wait a minute. Jeremy Clements has not clinched a playoff berth yet.
But then yet
Byron, Allgaier, and he's 4th in the championship playoff standings. Does he not have a win?
Clements?
Yeah.
Well, Clements.
I'm right now. I'm looking at NASCAR.com right now.
Well, Jeremy Clements did win the race at Road America back a few weeks ago, and obviously, of course, he has that one win, which obviously he's in the playoffs for sure.
Okay, because they have a little C underneath clinch playoff berth. How number 4 does not have a clinch, but Elliott Sadler at number 5 doesn't? Don't ask me why. Let me run through them again. Your championship in the Xfinity looks like this. William Byron 1, Justin Allgaier 2, Ryan Reed 3, Jeremy Clements 4, Elliott Sadler 5, Brennan Poole 6, Daniel Hemrick 7, Cole Custer 8, yep. Matt Tiff 9, Blake Cook 10th, Michael Annett 11th, and Brendan Gaughan is at the cutoff point.
Yep.
At 12. Underneath them is Dakota Armstrong, Ross Chastain, J.J. Yaley, Ryan Sieg, and Brandon Jones. Yep. Same question on the Xfinity side. I know a win puts you in, but Dakota Armstrong needs something to leapfrog Brendan Gaughan to get into that. A win would do him great, but I don't see that strong. Brendan Gaughan is a vet. He's been doing this for 12 years, and he ran with RWI, Rusty Wallace Incorporated. Now he's running with a new team. Brendan Gaughan has that pedigree where he knows and he understands and he has the talent to stay just above Armstrong part with 2 races to go?
Yep.
With the exception of a win, what does Armstrong have to do to leapfrog Gaughan?
So I would say with Armstrong, I mean, keep in mind, like, they're kind of like the top 15-ish type of team this year. Like, let's face it, like, the only time they finished in the top 5 was at Daytona. And I would probably say if Armstrong wants to make the chase, it would have to depend on the guys that are kind of below the cutoff that don't have a win this year, and then, he would have to, like, leapfrog his way to, like, maybe, like, a top 15 or a top 10 or something. But then I look at Brendan Gaughan, of course, he's a veteran. He drives the 62 car for Richard Childress or so forth. And, he's won in the Xfinity Series. He's won in the Truck Series. And I would just say this. Even if he does make the playoffs on points, I don't know if I could see him going to, like, maybe the final 8 or maybe the final 4 whatsoever. Because, like I said, like, Brendan's been racing the Xfinity for, like, the last few years or so forth. And, I'm looking at the standings right here, and Brendan only has, like, 2 top 5s and 7 top 10s so far this year. I mean, it is good, but, like, I've been watching them this year, and I could just say to myself, like, that team really, like, needs to run good. Like, if they're going to make the playoffs, they really need to start, like, performing, like, like they really want to win a championship.
Absolutely. And as we talk about that, let's move on to the Cup race at Darlington Raceway in beautiful Darlington, South Carolina.
Mm.
What a freaking event that was. Denny Hamlin. If you guys didn't watch the race, go back and watch it. Pause this. Go back and watch the race. Come back right here. We'll wait. Welcome back. Now, Denny Hamlin misses the entrance of pit road. He has to take another lap around the circuit, go in for his service. Everybody else at that time, some of the lower end guys were coming in, trying to get that track position. Denny Hamlin completely blows it and ends up winning the race. But when you think about it, he could have stayed out, done the one lap. He wouldn't have won that race. By missing that pit lane, Denny Hamlin put himself in the catbird seat. He went a lap down. I think he went 2 laps down.
Yep.
But when you go in, you get your service, you have to figure he was somewhere middle of the road on pit lane. 5 miles an hour. You get to your pit stall. You got 15 seconds worth of work. Now you have another half of a straightaway that you're doing at 45 miles an hour. Now you have to get up to speed. And then 3-4 laps later, the leaders come in. Logano, Harvick, Dillon, Busch, Eric Jones. All these guys come in. And you're at race speed. You now... And at Darlington, they're turning 29, 30-second laps. Takes the Harvicks, the Loganos, the Kenseths, everybody to come in and get their service. He's made 2 laps. He just made it up. And now he's at race speed. And he's on fresher tires by about 10 laps, which to me was the key to victory for Denny Hamlin. One thing that, if you don't mind me being a homer for a bit, when I heard that Kevin Harvick took the pole for Darlington, I was elated because Kevin Harvick is a guy that ever since he's come to Darlington, and I have a picture, I'll share it with you sometime. I met him in his rookie campaign in 2001 at Darlington. Great conversation. He's a really cool guy. If you ever get to meet Kevin Harvick, he is. Don't believe the haters. They're like, oh, Kevin Harvick's a crybaby. Boo-hoo. So is Kyle Busch. Get over it. Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of Kyle Busch love out of me, and I'm going to keep saying it. Sorry to some of my friends out there who watch this show and love Kyle Busch. Although I will say Kyle Busch ran the ass out of that track this weekend.
Yeah.
But to see what Hamlin did at a track like that, where track position is so important and speed is so important, it's not like Daytona where you can go 29th to 5th in the blink of an eye. This is a place where you have to fight for every position. Denny Hamlin earned that victory, and we'll get on to Denny Hamlin again later on. Most impressive guy, and I said it last week about Bristol, Eric Jones.
Yeah.
Eric Jones continues to shine.
Yeah.
And for him to go into that 20 next year, I believe he's taking over Kenseth's seat.
Yep.
Now you put a guy like Eric Jones, who is on, like you said earlier, an underfunded team, and you put him in JGR equipment. Anybody who races for Gibbs has to have the goods. Joe Gibbs does not hire junk, except Kyle Busch. Joe Gibbs looks for the best of the best. He is what Roush used to be.
Right.
Now, in an underfunded car, coming home 5th, he had the lead for a brief cup of coffee. I mean, you look at Harvick had the lead for a while, and then Truex had the lead forever. But bum luck for Martin Truex. That was just terrible.
Yeah.
What did you think when you saw the 78 go up into the wall and lose a tire?
I mean, there's a few questions that kind of came out from my theory, from the race this past Sunday. I mean, going back to when Hamlin missed the pit stall, I thought he lost the race right there. Because when I was watching him coming down pit road, I said, okay, he's coming in way too hot. And then, of course, he almost hit that water bell, so that he had to come around again. I said, that race is over for him. I mean, that race was literally over for him. And then I can't even remember where he was at that time. And then the last 10 laps, he was literally 5 seconds back in second. And I'm looking at it, I'm going wait a second, didn't he miss the pit stall with a certain amount of laps to go? And then
he was running 10th at that point.
Yeah. I mean, he was chasing like almost everybody down, and then I would say with 3 laps to go, he was on the 78's back bumper, and I said, okay, he's gonna get him like probably like 2 laps to go or something. And then of course that was when Truex hit the wall, and I was like, okay, what's like what just happened? Because I don't remember Truex cutting the tire or whatever. But I guess I saw on a replay they said that I guess Truex kind of slid up into the wall going off at turn 4, and then I think that's what might have cut down that tire.
And I'll buy that absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
To see guys like Truex, and again, it's Darlington. That anybody who's watched racing for any amount of time will tell you sometimes bad luck is just Darlington.
Yeah.
The Lady in Black, the Track Too Tough to Tame, all those nicknames are 100% true. Everything you've heard is 100% true.
Yeah.
But to see him at first, the first 40 laps belonged to Kevin Harvick. He was the class of the field. Something happened. Again, I go back to his pit crew, and I'm sure during the winter we'll go and we'll talk driver by driver and what they need to do to improve. And again, this is us sitting on an easy chair somewhere. But again, I've been watching racing 40 years, and to see Harvick's pit crew take him out of contention week after week after week is starting to grate on me.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let that detract from a really great race. To see some names like Chase Elliott, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Larson, who in the beginning stages of the race were strong and fall back. I don't know if that was adjustments, equipment, tires, etc., so forth. Somewhere early in the race, and maybe you can help me with this, somebody got a free set of tires very early on in the race. Do you remember that?
I kind of remember. I'm just not sure what driver it was, though.
I'm going to go back. I want to say it was one of the Dillon boys.
Yeah.
But I can't be certain.
Actually, I want to point this one out. So I don't know if you saw like the beginning of the parade at pace laps when Richard Petty was driving that.
Oh, wasn't that beautiful? Wasn't that beautiful? And he stayed out and they black flagged him.
I thought that was so bizarre, but then it was bizarre, but it was kind of funny at the same time. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, Richard, you've probably done enough pace laps. You can come in now. And then of course that happens.
Hell no! That is the king of stock car racing.
Yeah.
If he wanted to bring them to the restart zone and start the race, they should have let him do it. I thought that was classic. And I'm sure in that car, they had a little camera. You couldn't see his face really well. But I'm sure when they black flagged the 43, that old 1969 43, that he was laughing his ass off. That was gorgeous. But with the exception of Denny Hamlin, we're going to get to him in more detail in a minute. On the Cup level, who impressed you most this Sunday?
I definitely have to be Eric Jones, because after he finished second a few weeks ago at Bristol, back set up with a top 5, I'm saying to myself, okay, now we're going to Richmond. Of course, that's going to be another short track. And if anybody's predicting, who do you think's got a really good shot on Saturday night, I would have to go with the 77, because if you think about it, he's a really good short track kid. Obviously, of course, he ran pretty well at Bristol, and he ran really well at Darlington, which obviously, of course, Darlington's one of those tracks that's kind of tough to handle. But let's face it, Jones is on the verge of making the playoffs. I mean, he's a little bit below the cutoff right now, but if he has a really good run on Saturday, depending on what the other guys who have yet to have a win this year do, I think the 77 has a shot. But I think it's going to be tough, and I think it's going to be a little bit risky. But I would say whatever happens. But that's one driver that impressed me the most.
I'm gonna throw a curveball at all of you, and the driver that impressed me most this weekend finished in 7th place, and that'd be the 31 of Ryan Newman. Every time you count this guy out, he just rises to the occasion and gives you the run of his life. You expect to see the Hamlins, the Busch brothers, the Harvicks, the Dillons. You don't expect to see Eric Jones. And again, I thought the world of Eric Jones this weekend, but Ryan Newman, every time you think he's done, rises from the ashes. They should just change his name from the Rocket Man to the Phoenix. Because every time you think he's done, he rises from the ashes. I think this guy has at least 4 to 5 more good years of racing in him. I know he's north of 40 right now. Doesn't have a lot of good time left in him. not everybody can run like an Earnhardt till 51 or Harry Gant till
Right.
56 or Cripes. Morgan Shepherd is 199 years old, and every now and again he still makes a good run. Ryan Newman, to me, really took my breath away because he was, when you saw some of those crashes, you saw that 31 car crossing the screen.
Yeah.
And that's veteran move. He knew how to get out of the way. Casey Kane got caught up in something, and I don't have a lot of love for Casey Kane, but he's another guy that is a vet who knows his way around. When you see the crash start to happen, you already have in your mind, this is what I'm going to do. Ryan Newman avoided every possible bad scenario he could, got a top 10 finish, and I believe, hello. First beer in a week. Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
It won't happen in week 3. When you look at Ryan Newman, he really is. He's amazing.
Yeah.
We go back. We talked about it last week with 2014, where Newman finishes second to Harvick in the standings. Nobody saw Newman coming. I believe he already has a win this season.
Yeah, he wanted Phoenix back in the spring.
Okay, and we're gonna get to the points in just a moment.
Yep.
But again, for me, it was Ryan Newman. He avoided every possible calamity, and he shined, and he got himself a 7th place finish out of the deal. So for me, the little participation trophy, gold star, whatever you want to call it, this week, who impressed me? Ryan Newman.
Yeah.
So before we go to the standings, we found out today, actually, that Denny Hamlin was popped for a penalty after both wins at Darlington.
Yep.
Not only the Xfinity, but the Cup. I don't know if it was the same infraction. It was a rocker arm, I believe.
Yep.
On both series, he's docked driver points. He's docked owner points. The crew chiefs on both levels are suspended for 2 weeks.
Yep.
Does this hurt Denny Hamlin going forward into the playoffs? Speaking only of the Monster Energy Cup Series.
I mean, I would probably say it is, because of course, like, he's losing Mike Wheeler for about 2 weeks, and obviously, of course, like, the interim crew chief, like, they come in and they're like, okay, what do I have to do, and to get this team like up and running and so forth. But yeah, I mean, I saw this today, and I didn't even know this like for a fact, and and I was listening on the XM NASCAR radio today as well, and I think Dave Moody kind of said this at best. He said, everybody went to Darlington. They said, oh, it was pretty much awesome, that Hamlin, got a win. And then they found out this today. They said, well, it's good while it lasted, But like I said, both of his wins were pretty much encumbered, in which obviously I'm pretty much not a fan of this new NASCAR definition that they came out with this year. And I mean, like, the question is, like, what does encumbered even mean? Obviously, of course, it's okay, you can keep the win, but, we're just going to take away your points, so then you're not playoff eligible. I mean, heck, look at...
No, he's still playoff eligible, but at the same time, I believe the encumbered is a nicer way to say there's a black cloud over your win.
Right.
I mean, how many times over the years have we heard Jimmy Johnson get popped after a win because Chad Knaus, who, in my opinion, is one of the biggest cheaters in NASCAR, I'm sure we'll talk about that over the winter, Chad Knaus makes this adjustment or this adjustment. It doesn't meet NASCAR's tech rules. They win the race. They win it hands down. Congratulations, Jimmy Johnson. Boom, confetti. And then they go through tech, and they find out this is wrong or that's wrong or that's wrong. At some point, you just have to lose the encumbered thing. You cheated. You got caught. You keep the win. It wasn't like they had a bigger horsepower engine. It wasn't like they had, an extra gallon of fuel in the tank. It wasn't something that would adversely. It was something minor, but the rules are still the rules.
Right.
And unfortunately, in 2 different races for 2 different wins in one weekend, Hamlin gets caught.
Right. And then, of course, the problem is that, these crew guys, they push these cars to the limit, making all these adjustments and, whatsoever. But then, once you push that car onto the laser inspection, and then, if NASCAR finds something they don't like, they're going to tell you, look, you need to go back, you need to fix this, and then, of course, when they find in post-race inspection they don't like, then, obviously, of course, it's either going to be an L1 or an L2 penalty, whatsoever. And then of course again, like, NASCAR will also check, the lug nuts. And then if you have like either one or two lug nuts that are unsecured, you'll pretty much have a fine, or your crew chief will probably be suspended for like maybe I'd say 2 races or so. And then heck, there was one race, I think there was like maybe like 2 races this year at Dover where, the tire came off the wheel, and then I guess the crew chiefs got suspended for about 4 weeks. I mean, that happened with Kyle Busch and Chase Briscoe.
Right.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, stupid things like that. Junior got popped for a penalty this week. Dale Earnhardt Jr. got popped for a lug nut penalty. To me, the lug nuts, not so much. Anything that involves the inner workings of the car, track bar, engine, rocker arm, the truck trailing arm, whatever the case is, anything that will put you in a position that will better you over everybody else. There's a reason they call it stock car racing. The cars are built to run the same. It's how you build them within the specifications of what NASCAR says that makes you a winner or a loser. I hate to say it like that. There's one winner, there's 39 losers.
Yep.
And in this scenario, Denny Hamlin's team on both the Xfinity and the Cup level failed him.
Yep.
They failed him. All he does is get in that car and drive. He's not under the chassis. He's not in the engine. He's not doing anything but drive the car. Now you're screwing him out of what he did, what he deserves, and what he should hold dear to his heart.
Yeah.
So while we're on the subject, let's look at the playoff picture for the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. Martin Truex is sitting in the catbird seat at number 1, lording over everybody else. Mm-hmm. Kyle Busch second, Kyle Larson third, Jimmy Johnson 4th, Brad Keselowski 5th. Ricky Stenhouse is in 6th, Kevin Harvick in 7th, Ryan Blaney 8th, Denny Hamlin 9th, Kurt Busch 10th. Ryan Newman, we spoke about earlier, is in 11th, Casey Kane 12th, Austin Dillon 13th. Here's where it gets hairy. 14th is Chase Elliott, 94 to the good. Matt Kenseth, 15th, 92 to the good. Jamie McMurray, 16th at the cutoff, 91 to the good. Now, here comes a few guys that need a win to get in. And this is where the Elliots, the Kenseths, and the McMurrays need to worry. Clint Bowyer's in 17th, 91 to the bad. Eric Jones, we spoke a lot about him today, 18th, 123 to the bad. Joey Logano, always a force, 129 to the bad and 19th. Daniel Suarez, what a great run for him as a rookie, 196 to the bad. Trevor Bayne, once again, climbing up where he was up years ago. He had his health ailment, 262 to the bad and 21st. Everybody's favorite, Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 22nd, 303 to the bad. Before we talk about Richmond, of those 6 drivers that I mentioned, Bowyer, Jones, Logano, Suarez, Bayne, Jr., if you had to pick one that's going to be in contention for a win next Saturday, this coming Saturday at Richmond, who do you pick?
So this will actually kind of interest you. And I was thinking about this like probably the last few weeks, or maybe the last week or so. I would have to say Joey Logano. And the reason why I say this, just think about it. What a redemption it would be for the 22 car, to win at Richmond after they won in the spring. And then, of course, they found something in the rear suspension that they didn't like. And then, of course, they took, well, not only they took, but, they encumbered Logano's win. They took him off of the playoff contention. So, and I was actually watching them after that Richmond penalty. They haven't been running the same after that. Like, they've only ran like probably in the top 5, maybe a few races. His only best finish after that Richmond penalty was 3rd at Michigan. But other than that, like, they've been finishing like maybe like 20th or worse or so. But I would say if Logano wants to make the playoffs, he would have to win this Saturday night. And, and let's not forget, Logano has been in that whole elimination thing before, because he's done it like back in 2015. And then, of course, he did it last year at Talladega, and then, of course, he did it last year at Phoenix as well to get into the Final Four. So, Logano, I would say he's not in pressure at all, and I would have to speak. He's going to have to run his heart out, and he's going to have to beat all those guys that have yet to win a race this year, or so forth.
Okay, and I'm going to go a different route.
Yeah,
if it's me in my heart of hearts, I see Dale Earnhardt Jr. winning that race. Of those six, my heart says Dale Earnhardt Jr. Let's send him out with a Jeff Gordon style, but he's got to do it himself. This
Yeah,
is not a question of let's everybody move over and let little orphan Earnhardt win the race and all that BS. That's my pick from a NASCAR fan point of view. If the question is who do I think from my mind
yeah,
who is going to take that win this Sunday? If I had to pick out of these six drivers, it's Eric Jones.
yeah. I
Eric
would say
Jones
so.
will get that win. He's going to push McMurray down. That is, of course, if Matt Kenseth or Chase Elliott don't have a bad day and McMurray vaults himself. Those
Yeah,
three guys, Elliott, Kenseth, and McMurray, are in real danger of not making this year's playoffs on the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series because they're
yeah.
so close. They're within 3 points of each other.
Right.
Looking at the playoff points they've earned, insofar as stage wins, Chase Elliott has 2, Kenseth has 3, McMurray has 0. So maybe I don't know if that's a tiebreaker or anything like that, but I don't see Clint Boyer doing much. Logano, he's always tough, but I think this may be a rebuilding year for Joey Logano. Daniel
Yeah,
Suarez being a rookie, he's run his heart out. Trevor Bayne, take it or leave it. He's one of those buy or sell. But my mind, the pick that I'm going to make is if one of those 6 cusp drivers are going to take a checkered flag this coming weekend at Richmond, not my pick to win the race, but of those 6, I see Eric Jones being the guy that leapfrogs everybody
yeah.
and goes to the top of the mountain.
I could see that
So,
too.
so as we move on, we are going to get ready to take the final lap here, and we are going to go to next week. We're going to talk about the Xfinity race real quick. Both races, Xfinity and Cup, are at Richmond. The Truck Series is off. So,
Yep.
going forward to Richmond in the Xfinity Series, who do you see as a player going forward? Give me your top 3, like we did last week. Who are the 3 guys that are going to make the biggest impact?
So obviously, I saw the entry list today, and if obviously he was running in the Xfinity race on Friday, so he's going to be a tough one, to beat. But one driver who I think is going to be a one to watch for is going to be the 7 of Justin Allgaier. The reason why is because if you saw the Richmond race back in the spring, he almost beat Kyle Larson, and then of course, the whole fiasco where he didn't know the caution came out until they passed that overtime line on the backstretch, which is now the start finish line. So not only that, Allgaier, he knows how to run good on the short tracks. He ran well at Bristol back in the summer. He ran well at Richmond. He's a short track type of guy, and not only that, he has the one win that's in the playoffs. So he's going to be one that I'll be at the one to watch. And then of course, I would have to go with let's say maybe the 2 car of Austin Dillon. He's another one who runs really well on the short track, so he's going to be a one on my list to watch.
All right. For myself, I think it's going to be a redemption week. If you really want to come back from a really bad week, Matt Tifft is going to do it this week.
Yeah.
I think this is where he punches his ticket finally to get into the playoffs 100% with a win. Behind him, if I have to make a second choice, it's going to be one of the guys that's already clinched a spot, and I've watched over the years and been to Richmond a couple times. There's nobody that runs an Xfinity car at Richmond better than Elliott Sadler.
Yeah.
So those are my 2 picks, Elliott Sadler, Matt Tifft. If someone's going to win that race, it's going to be one of those 2 guys.
Yeah.
Moving on to the Cup Series, who are you looking at this weekend?
So I would say, even though Hamlin won last week, which of course he had the penalty, today. I think Hamlin's going to run pretty well this weekend at Richmond. He's won there a couple of times before, including this race last year. And, he's another one that runs pretty well in the short track. So he's going to be a one on my list that I'm going to end up watching. And then my second one definitely would have to be Eric Jones. Because like I said, and like you said, he's a short track guy. He ran pretty well at Bristol back in the August race. He finished second, he also finished in the top 5 last week at Talladega. Not Talladega, Darlington. I'm sorry, but yeah, he's going to be another one to watch. And then my sleeper is definitely going to be Logano because he's coming back to Richmond. months after, he won the first time, which of course he had the penalty, and like I said, the 22 car hasn't been running as well after that penalty happened, but if he does want to make the playoffs, he's going to have to win this weekend, and he's going to have to do really stout on pit road, and he's going to have really good track positioning, because like I said, if you mess up on pit road or if you get caught up in a crash, that's it. You're automatically out of contention.
Pretty much. Now, I'm going to take my 3 picks for the Cup Series, and I may go a little sideways. The first thing, again, I spoke of Dale Earnhardt Jr., one of those guys, much like Newman, that rises from the ashes, and winning you're in.
Yeah.
And right now, Dale Earnhardt is in probably the spot where he really needs this.
Yeah.
Not just for him, but again, he's the statesman that's going out. He's the guy that, much like if you're a Yankees fan, and if you're not a Yankees fan, you may not understand it. If you're a Red Sox fan, I'll throw David Ortiz into this mix. As a Yankees fan, everybody wanted to see Don Mattingly go to the World Series at least once.
Yeah.
So as Don Mattingly's coming toward the end of his career, they get to the playoffs. Don Mattingly hits this fantastic grand slam that almost gets the Yankees to the World Series.
Yeah.
They don't quite make it. But you want to see that. You want to see a guy go out on top. So first pick, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Second pick, I'm really looking at this, and I'm looking at the list of guys that are already locked into the playoffs, and thinking back to Richmond past, Kevin Harvick's got to be on that list.
Yeah.
And again, that's not a homer pick. That is, knowledge. It's going back to seeing how many times Kevin Harvick has just gone, much like Phoenix, come out of the box and just blown everybody away.
Yeah.
My sleeper pick, I'm not gonna piggyback your Eric Jones, but I think if you're gonna see a first time winner at Phoenix and someone that needs a win to get into the playoffs, you're gonna see Daniel Suarez Saturday.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, he finished in the top 5 a few weeks ago at Bristol, and he's had a good season. In the 19 car. I mean, I don't know. I mean, do I see him making the chase? I mean, the playoffs. I don't really know, but even if he does, and if luck goes his way on Saturday night, I really think he has a shot. Now, do I think he could go to the Final Four? I don't know. Because just remember, he was in the Xfinity playoffs last year, and of course, he won at Dover, and then he made the Final Four based on points, and then of course he had to win that race, last year to win the championship, and then pretty much somebody on old tires, which was Cole Witt, pretty much stacked up the field, and then that pretty much gave Suarez a chance, to take the lead in and win the championship. So I'd probably say if Suarez wants to make the playoffs, luck has to go his way on Saturday.
Crazy question for you before we close out, and then we'll do our plugs.
Yep.
Looking at the guys who have clinched, and I'll run down the list real quick from worst to first. Austin Dillon, Casey Kane, Ryan Newman, Kurt Busch, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Kevin Harvick, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Brad Keselowski, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex. Which of these kids is not like the other? Which of these guys do you say to yourself, why? How they're going to be bounced in the first round? Which of these guys, of those 13 names, do you think are going to get bounced in the first round?
I mean, my answer happened to like anybody. I mean, you just have to see what happens like in that first round, pretty much Chicago and New Hampshire and Dover, whoever, wins those 3 races to make it in the next round, great. If not, you're going to have to go to Dover, try to win it all, to make it into the next round. But like
or then you go to Charlotte where it's anybody's ball game.
Yeah. But like I said, with this playoff system that NASCAR introduced a few years ago, you just never know what's going to happen. I mean, it could happen to any driver. I mean, it could happen to at any track as possible.
If I had to pick one, it's Austin Dillon. I know he raced his heart out at Charlotte to get that win.
Yeah.
But I think circumstances gave him that win. It's not like he went and blew the field away. Austin Dillon really, I don't want to say he was handed a win, because that's not the case. I don't want to say he lucked into a win. Again, not the case. But right. I think circumstances basically presented itself to where Austin Dillon took that checkered flag at Charlotte. And in my opinion, if any one of those 13 guys are going to get bounced in the first round, Austin Dillon's my pick.
Yeah. I would say so for sure.
All right. And we are both in agreement that the Martin Truex and Kyle Larson teams are the class of the field. Those are two guys we're going to see in Homestead, Miami. Do you have anything to plug this week, my friend?
So, I don't think I mentioned this on the first episode. So, I have my very own Facebook page, NASCAR IndyCar Central. So, I will post up results, news, standings. I have pictures of the winners from the past races or so forth. And then, and then also post up like some videos or whatever that. So just follow me on Facebook and on NASCAR IndyCar Central. And then we are also on Instagram at NASCAR IndyCar. And then we are also on Twitter at NASCAR Indy. So if anybody's watching this, and if anybody's a NASCAR fan out there, please follow, please like my page, because I really want to see some new followers that love the sport, that love talking about NASCAR, that love talking about drivers and races and all that other stuff. So please, I'm welcome with following new followers and new subscribers and so forth. And if you guys want to trash talk about races whatsoever, like just do whatever you want, there's no like referee or anything else whatsoever. So those are pretty much the NASCAR IndyCar Central. That I subscribe and see what you think.
Excellent, and also tell your friends to subscribe to the C&J Speedway Review. This Sunday, the Loki and Jabroni Show will be in Springfield, Massachusetts, at the Eastfield Mall at the Card and Comic Show. You can see me and Loki. He's not here right now. That's why you can't see him. We will have the live stream going. We will be interviewing WWE legends, Tugboat and Lex Luger. Exclusive. This is going to be Facebook Live only. This is not going on the regular Wednesday podcast. This is an exclusive deal this Sunday, Springfield, Massachusetts. Love to see you guys all there. As always, subscribe to the Loki and Jabroni Show. We go hot every Monday night live streaming as we record, and we drop the audio only on Wednesdays on iTunes and Google Play Music. The wonderful and talented Eddie Focus, who produces this show, is also the producer of the main podcast. This is all a part of the Focus Digital Media Network. So follow the C&J Speedway Review on YouTube. Follow the Loki and Jabroni Show. Go to www.patreon.com/Loki and Jabroni. Donate some money. Subscribe to the show. When you do, you get certain perks, and you help us get better content, not only on the Loki and Jabroni Show, but on the C&J Speedway Review and on Loki's Gaming Show. How'd you feel this week, kid?
Felt good.
Good, excellent.
I probably say the first time, it was a little bit first time at first, but I probably say the second time I thought it was fun. Show
the people your shirt before we go. This is gorgeous. Look at this thing.
So if anybody's a fan of the movie Days of Thunder, and obviously, I don't know if you guys know this, but Days of Thunder is my all-time favorite NASCAR movie. And I don't care what anyone says. I can just watch it over and over and over again, and I can still say it's one of my favorite movies. So one of my favorite characters, of course, Michael Rooker plays Rowdy Burns, who drives one of my favorite cars is the 51 ExxonMobil Chevrolet Lumina. And actually, to have it, I'm wearing one of his shirts. You can get it on teespring.com, and they'll have Rowdy Burns shirts, stickers, coffee mugs, you name it. So yeah, that is teespring.com. So that is TWE Spring.
As long as I don't see any Russ Wheeler, I'm good.
Yeah.
All right. So for Corey Huffnagel, I'm Chris Burns. This has been C&J Speedway Report. We will see you next week. Same race time. Same race channel.
All right.